Kim Kardashian comes in with this plunging neckline, I looked at that and thought, well, that's not quite appropriate.
The legal profession, sometimes a little bit of subtlety can be a statement as well. Always dress as though you have a date with destiny.
The most unprofessional thing that I have seen a lawyer wear at court was a pair of
You dress too well, the clients might be thinking that all of the money that they're paying you, that you're using to buy your attire.
It's hard, isn't it? I mean, you've got to find that balance.
One day I came into the office in my trackies, but at about 8:45 a.m. I get an email from a magistrate telling me that there is an urgent listing. You're listening to Decent in the Law, a podcast by Aitken Partners, and we're here to take the suit off the legal profession, Susan.
Yes, we are. About each episode, we are going to bust the myths, the jargon and the courtroom outside of the TV shows and bring it into reality behind Australia's legal world.
So we're going to be having honest conversations, unexpected insights, and maybe a few confessions.
I hope so, Bao. And this
is
De-Suiting the Law. I'm Susan Ilias and I'm a principal lawyer at Aitken Partners.
And I'm Bao No, also a principal lawyer at Aitken Partners. Susan, today we're stepping into a different kind of runway, aren't we?
Yes, we are, Bao. We're talking about the courtroom runway.
That's right. And that kind of has influenced what we're wearing today.
It does, yes. And Bao, I have to say, you look amazing in your pink jacket and white flower. For those who can't see, Bao is looking stunning in his outfit today.
Thank you, Susan. And you too. You always look stunning. But this is something very different for you.
It is something very different for me. So for those who can't see it, I have a blue lace dress, a white jacket and some pearls and jewellery. And it's not the sort of thing that I would wear to court.
And it's perfectly on theme for today's episode.
So there are certain do's and don'ts about what should be worn in the courtroom. And in our last episode, we did some comparisons between the American TV shows and the reality of courtrooms in Australia. I think we could also use those comparisons when we're talking about the do's and don'ts of fashion in the courtroom. What would you say would be one of the do's? So what should be worn, do you think?
Well, the first thing I would say is always wear something that is deemed appropriate to you. And it's important to know that you are entering into a space. You're going to a courtroom setting. You're going to be there by your fellow colleagues in the profession, and you're going to be there with your clients as well. So it's always important to wear something that, number one, you're comfortable with, but it's also appropriate.
Yes. And when you say appropriate, what would you think, what would you say to listeners that the Australian legal profession would consider to be appropriate, given that it's a very traditional profession?
Yep.
What would you say would be appropriate?
I think from a male perspective, a suit, I wouldn't say it had to be a dark coloured suit. I know that the legal industry is traditional, and there has been, I guess, that trend for male lawyers to be wearing dark coloured suits, whether that's your blacks, your greys, or your navies. But now I've actually made observations where a lot of more younger lawyers entering the profession are wearing, your browns and your lighter greys. And to me, that's also appropriate because they come with a collared shirt, they have their shoes, it's not open toe shoes.
Yes.
There's no sort of like skin showing. I think that's also an important factor because we're not there to make a fashion statement, although I do like a fashion statement myself, I must say, Susan.
And you always look fabulous, Val.
But not when you're there advancing a case, because you have to remember that you're not there to represent yourself. You're there to represent your clients.
Exactly, yes. I'd like to touch on the changes in what is appropriate for women to wear in the courtroom. So many decades ago, maybe not that long ago, it was not appropriate for women to wear a pantsuit, to wear trousers in court. It was very much a necessity for women to wear a dress or a skirt and a jacket. And, neutral coloured stockings. So it was quite a strict requirement. Thankfully, things have changed and women are now accepted and can wear essentially not what they want to wear, but they can wear pants, suits, jackets and so on. We will, in a future episode, be talking to Judge Betty King, who has a very interesting story to tell about when she first started practicing as a lawyer. But I'll leave that up to her, and it was a matter of her having to go and change her stockings because there was a judge that wasn't going to address her. What would you consider to be the don'ts? Don't wear in an Australian courtroom.
I would say an outfit that is too revealing. And, you know, I do think that, again, we are a profession that is quite traditional. You want to make sure that you're there to represent your clients and not yourself.
Yes.
And whilst I do think that there has been a trend in being more colours in the courtroom, there's still that professional attire, I would say. It's a corporate professional attire. And I think that something also that's come to mind is that if you're somebody who's going to trial and will be there for a very long time, dress something that you're going to be comfortable in as well.
Yes.
Because tight fitted attires can actually be really uncomfortable, particularly if you're there for a 2-week trial.
Absolutely.
Right. So I think that's something that to be considered. But, you know, ultimately, all I can say is fashion is a statement. And the legal profession, sometimes a little bit of subtlety can be a statement as well. And I think it's important that you dress however you want, but make sure that you're there and you're always reminded that you are a lawyer at the end of the day, and you're there to represent your client, and you're not there because you're on some reality TV show or you're a fashionista.
Yes, exactly. When you said make sure it's not too revealing, I want to touch on a show that we spoke about in our last episode, All's Fair. And there is one scene where Kim Kardashian comes in with this plunging neckline, and she wasn't in court, but I think there was a mediation that she was attending with her opponent and her client and the other client. And I looked at that and thought, well, that's not quite appropriate and would not be accepted. Probably wouldn't be accepted in any of their courtrooms either. Certainly not in our courtroom. But yeah, there is a line that you have to draw, I think. And again, we're talking about TV and it's not quite reality, but these are the myths that we want to bust here on our show.
And Susan, you know, I think that it comes to the perception of what a lawyer is, right? You know, I think that the public will perceive a lawyer to be dressed professionally. They take their job seriously, and you know, if you can be Kim Kardashian and dress whoever you want, but it may be that your client doesn't perceive you to be a very serious legal practitioner based on the attire that you're dressed. And you know, as a young lawyer who was fresh in the industry, I must admit I was inspired by a lot of these American TV shows who always dress impeccably, because someone, you know, I had a very senior lawyer once told me that always dress as though you have a date with destiny. And that is something that I've always carried with me in my legal career, because you never know who you're going to bump into in those lifts, or you never know who you're going to see when you're in at the court foyer. So for me personally, I've always managed to dress, I would say, professionally, but appropriate for the actual setting. And that comes down to sometimes the perception of my sort of clients, right, Susan? And how do you think that sort of affects a lawyer's attire, that client's perception?
Clients do expect you to look professional and look the part, essentially. And I did have a client once come to me and say that she didn't like the lawyer that she had spoken to previously, and then came across to our firm because she didn't think that her lawyer looked the part, did not look professional. Her lawyer wore a cardigan to court. that doesn't necessarily mean that that lawyer was not a good lawyer, but according to the client's perception, she wanted somebody and a firm that was going to represent her in a more professional manner. The most unprofessional thing that I have seen a lawyer wear at court was a pair of Crocs. Now, don't get me wrong, I love Crocs. Comfortable, fantastic, flexible,
and they're
plastic
cute now.
shoes,
You can add things to them.
Yeah, you can add all sorts of things to them, but it's not appropriate in court. I don't know what the reason was for her wearing Crocs in court, but she did. And that's definitely a no-no. So we should not be looking at casual Crocs in the courtroom. No Crocs in the courtroom. I have to say too, though, I do say to my clients that they also need to be
That's right.
appropriately dressed. Now, I was in court one day and thankfully this person wasn't my client, but I don't know why I'm always looking at people's shoes, but I seem to be. He was wearing slippers in the shape of a dinosaur. Okay. That's not quite appropriate attire. We don't want to sound like we're, being picky about what people should be wearing, but there is a certain level of, respect, I think, too, that you have to show the court as well.
This might be controversial, Susan, but there is also that idea about perception if you dress too well.
Oh, yes.
When I was a young lawyer, I once had an office manager say to me, if you dress too well, the clients might be thinking that all of the money that they're paying you, that you're using to buy your attire and how you dress. Now, I would love for that to be the reality,
yes.
But we all know that's not the truth.
No.
So what do you think when there's that sort of perception when a lawyer dresses too well, maybe too well like Harvey Specter?
It's hard, isn't it? I mean, you've got to find that balance. And as we said in our previous episode, Harvey Specter looked amazing in those suits. I mean, the best dressed man around at the time. I guess it's different depending on what area of law you're in, who your clientele is. So there has to be a balance, doesn't
I think
there?
you touched on that important aspect. It's like you need to really understand your clientele.
Yes.
If you're going to be doing a lot of business deals, by all means, come to these meetings in a suit. But if your client is someone who's in the construction industry, or you're doing a site visit, or you're going to a farm because it's a property possession case in a rural town, don't come in those expensive suits.
Yes.
I would probably say, wear something that you will be happy to get dirty.
Yes. So, Bao, it's not just clients who may not be dressed appropriately, or judges will think that they're not dressed appropriately. Do you have an example of anything that you've seen in the courtroom that where a judge has made a comment about a lawyer's attire?
I have seen personally where a lawyer has been asked to perhaps not wear those shoes next time to come into court. I think it was said more as like an off-the-cuff comment, but we could kind of understand what that judiciary was trying to say. And I say that because those shoes, when I look at them, she could have had a really serious accident inside the courtroom.
What were the shoes like?
They were extremely high stilettos, and the reason why is that he was already not happy with how the case was running. It was stood down multiple times, and she was just taking a really long time to get into the courtroom because she probably could not wear those shoes. So that's one thing that I've observed. But I must say, there was also an incident when I was a really young lawyer in the profession where I've gone to the county court just to observe, and I remember seeing this barrister wonderfully dressed, and she had the most nicest red stilettos, but I guess even though she was dressed impeccably, it didn't really change the outcome for her client at all. And maybe perhaps that was something that she wore to remind herself that, ultimately this is just a profession, it is a job, and it is a career, and, your identity is not going to be tied with any sort of outcome. And maybe that was her way of reminding herself, because I remember those shoes, they were bright red.
Yeah, fantastic. I love bright red stilettos.
So, Susan, I've also noticed that there are certain trends these days. Fashion is a statement, and there are a lot of trends. And what are your tips to young lawyers who are into fashion? Because we want people to still be themselves and be able to express themselves. What are some of the tips that you have for somebody who is a lawyer but they're really into fashion?
I think, again, as you said earlier, about it's great to be yourself and be comfortable with who you are and what you're wearing. But again, you've got to choose your scene. You've got to choose
your audience.
Your audience. You can be more casual in the office, of course, if you're just bogged down in drafting documents. But if you're going to court or if you've got a really important mediation, then I think you've just got to choose the right attire and a suit. You can never go wrong with a suit.
And I would say, there's nothing more powerful than being dressed in a well-tailored suit. That's what I think. I think that to me gives me that confidence for me to be able to achieve those great results for my clients. Because when I feel good in what I wear, I feel that automatically the outcome or the result that I'm going to be able to get for my client will be a good result because I'm feeling confident in what I'm wearing.
Yeah.
And I guess the tip that I have for young lawyers who are into fashion is that it doesn't have to come at a compromise or at a cost to your identity or brand or your interest in fashion, but knowing your audience is probably the key. Understanding where you're going to be going that day as well, and dress suitably for the particular occasion is what I would say.
I agree. I think probably the more recent shows that are coming up, like we mentioned in All's Fair, not that I want to criticise their clothing because they're beautiful, obviously designer clothes, but maybe not appropriate for our work and our environment. And certainly not going to court.
And you can't change someone's perception of you. I mean, like Elle Woods, she wore pink, similar to the kind of colour palette that I'm choosing today, to go to court, meet her colleagues. And there's always that idea of, can you be somebody who takes your career or your job seriously if you're not dressed the part?
Yeah. Would you wear that to court, Val?
I wouldn't.
Without the flower?
I wouldn't, Susan. No. And because a lot of my matters, they deal with very complex sort of issues, and I have to be sensitive to my clients as well, and sensitive to the judge that I'm going to be having that particular day. So whilst I would love to be able to wear this everywhere, I would probably choose my audience and understand that there is a time and a place for certain things, and I will probably elect to wear a very nice suit. And depending on the sort of day that it is, on whether it's the first day of trial or the last day of trial, I find myself personally to relax a little bit when it comes to how traditional my colour scheme is.
Oh, okay.
On the first day of trial, I'll probably wear something quite traditional, with my dark blacks or my navies, and then progressively go towards more light colours.
More casual as you go down the line. The other thing I want to touch on too is that we don't see on American TV shows that we have here, that we have adopted from the English legal system, is wigs and gowns.
That's right, Susan.
So there are certain courts in Australia where wigs and gowns are appropriate, and it really is a matter of everybody that wears the gown and the wig, everybody looks the same. It's not just one person looking better than the other, or the whole idea really is that everybody is equal in the courtroom, and then everyone presents their case, and it's obviously decided by the judge. So it's an interesting tradition, obviously, that's never seen in TV reality shows. But certainly something that we've adopted from the English legal system.
I've also made observations in the last few years that, a lot of members of the judiciary have started to dress in more vibrant colours or patterns or prints. And I think that is a great indication to the kind of trend that we're seeing the legal profession evolve into, is that, when you as a young lawyer see that someone like a judge is dressing in, say, a leopard print blazer, then you might feel like it's okay for you to one day go into a courtroom. But it may be that choose your audience again.
Yes.
That with that particular judge, it might be okay, but with someone else, it may not be.
That's true.
So I guess the theme is that whilst wear what you want, have confidence in your attire, but you need to understand the kind of audience that and where you are as well.
Yeah, there are do's and don'ts of the Courtroom Runway. Not as interesting as Melbourne Fashion Week.
No.
I'm afraid.
It's probably a practical tip that I have for our young listeners and our young lawyers is that, during COVID, obviously we as lawyers know our hearing and our listening quite well. But there are certain occasions, certain instances where a member of the judiciary, a judge or a magistrate might call for an urgent hearing, and that absolutely happened to me one day. I came into the office in my trackies, I had a tank top singlet on, it was quite hot that day, and I was prepared to just do file work that day. But at about 8:45 a.m, I get an email from a magistrate who I've regularly appeared before, telling me that there is an urgent listing because he wants to get down to the issues of the subpoenas and whether or not these subpoenas should be produced because there were some sensitive information that subpoenas. So as you can imagine, I was mortified. I've never once appeared in court with trackies on and a tank top. So I, apologized and I said, Your Honor, I regularly appear before you and this is not how I would usually dress. But please, given the urgency of the listing, may I please be excused? And then, he was quite sensitive and he made a joke out of it and said, Mr. No, I know you quite well and this is definitely something you would never wear. So I guess my practical tip for young lawyers is always to have a spare outfit in your office. In our office, we have the basement that we can use. So if you have a locker, please, utilize that.
Keep
and
a spare jacket.
Yeah, you just never know.
For both male and female, keep a spare jacket handy because there are times where you will get an urgent hearing and you've got half an hour in which to log on, or if it's online especially, log on, grab your jacket and appear appropriately.
Also be prepared that you might think that it's an online hearing, but they can change their mind and require in-person appearance as well.
Yes.
With our firm, we also have casual Fridays, which we come in, quite relaxed and we're not in a suit. We're in our casual attire. But again, that could also catch a few of us out, right, Susan?
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely. So be prepared. I think that's the moral of the story. Be prepared and have a suit or a jacket or something. Bao, I have a question for you. So do you change the way that you dress or, whatever suit you're wearing depending on the judge that you know that you're going to be appearing before? Because I don't. I would wear the same... not the same suit, but the same level of attire. It doesn't matter which judge I'm going to appear before. Do you vary what you're going to wear depending on who you're going to be appearing?
I would say sometimes, Susan. Sometimes I do because I have appeared before those judges before in the past and I understand what they're like. I also understand that we could have banter as well when I do my submissions, and I've made observations about how they've dressed and like I said before, when we as lawyers can see members of the judiciary embracing fashion and embracing certain colours or statements, it makes it, I feel like it's okay for me to be able to do that and to
as well, yes.
So there will be certain times, but if I was in a very serious matter that dealt with very significant allegations made against my client, then I'll probably be dressing quite dark in that sense.
Conservatively.
Yeah, conservatively. But I think that knowing who you appear before is of importance for our listeners to understand.
Right, yeah.
But I would say that fashion is a statement. If you wear something that you're confident in, it actually shows and it radiates.
It does, yes.
You're less nervous if you're
comfortable.
If you're comfortable.
Yes.
And, you know, this goes to both male and female listeners, is that if you wear something that you're confident in, it actually shows when you're with a client as well. And another thing is that in most firms, there is a dress code policy. Make sure that you don't get yourself in trouble with HR and you read that fine print very clearly about dress code. And whilst a lot of, you know, firms similar to ours, we're quite relaxed into how we dress in the office because ultimately we want our team and our staff to feel comfortable in what they wear. But there is also a standard, right, Susan?
That's true. Yes. No, you're right.
So just be mindful of that sort of dress code policy in most firms. They have that as well.
Yeah. And we're lucky though that we've got Casual Friday. We have functions and people can be casual some days and dress, you know, for the functions. So yeah, just be mindful of that as well.
And if you have an event, say after work, and you didn't bring a spare outfit, probably maybe my personal tip that I have is come in that outfit for work, see your clients, meet counsel, go to court, however it be, but you can always accessorize an outfit to make it something a little bit more extra.
That's true.
Just like I have today.
I love that, Bao. For those that can't see it, Bao has this fabulous pink jacket with a beautiful white flower attached to the
And then if I need to see a client later, what I'll do is I'll just remove this flower.
Remove the flower. I love that, Bao. So is the moral of the story now, we're going to add to that, keep a jacket or a suit in your locker, but also keep some accessories as
some
well.
accessories.
Okay.
That will be the tip, Susan.
Oh, I love your advice. Thanks, Bao.
Well, thank you to our listeners for listening, and we hope to see you next time. Please tune in.
Yes, thank you. I'm Susan Ilias.
And I'm Bao No. Thank you.
Thanks again. Bye.